Welcome to the Daily Bible Reader Podcast. I am your host, Rakeyia Collins, and the mission of this podcast is to read the Bible from beginning to end every single year, starting in 2024. If that mission sounds interesting to you, I'd encourage you to grab your Bible and read along with me. On today's episode of the Daily Bible Reader, we are going to be picking up with Leviticus chapter 4 and going until Leviticus chapter 6. So Leviticus chapter 4, laws for sin offerings. And the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, "Speak to the people of Israel, saying, if anyone sins unintentionally in any of the Lord's commandments about things not to be done, and does any one of them, if it is an anointed priest who sins, thus bringing guilt on the people, then he shall offer for the sin that he has committed a bull from the herd without blemish to the Lord for a sin offering. He shall bring the bull to the entrance of the tent of meeting before the Lord, and lay his hand on the head of the bull, and kill the bull before the Lord. And the anointed priest shall take some of the blood of the bull and bring it into the tent of meeting. And the priest shall dip his finger in the blood and sprinkle part of the blood 7 times before the Lord in front of the veil of the sanctuary. And the priest shall put some of the blood on the horns of the altar of fragrant incense before the Lord, that is in the tent of meeting, and all the rest of the blood of the bull he shall pour out at the base of the altar on burnt offering, that is at the entrance of the tent of meeting. And all the fat of the bull of the sin offering he shall remove from it, the fat that covers the entrails, and the fat that is on the entrails, and the 2 kidneys that the fat is on them at the loins, and the long lobe of the liver that he shall remove with the kidneys, just as these are taken out of the ox of the sacrifice of the peace offerings. And the priest shall burn them on the altar of burnt offering. But the skin of the bull and all its flesh, with its head, its legs, its entrails, and its dung, all the rest of the bull he shall carry outside the camp to a clean place, to the ash heap, and shall burn it up on the fire of wood. On the ash heap it shall be burned up. If the whole congregation of Israel sins unintentionally, and the thing is hidden from the eyes of the assembly, and they do any one of the things that by the Lord's commandments ought not to be done, and they realize their guilt, when the sin which they have committed becomes known, the assembly shall bring a bull from the herd for a sin offering, and bring it to the front of the tent of meeting. And the elders of the congregation shall lay their hands on the head of the bull before the Lord, and the bull shall be killed before the Lord. Then the anointed priest shall bring some of the blood of the bull into the tent of meeting, and the priest shall dip his finger in the blood and sprinkle it 7 times before the Lord in front of the veil. And he shall put some of the blood on the horns of the altar that is in the tent of meeting before the Lord. And the rest of the blood he shall pour out at the base of the altar of burnt offering, that is at the entrance of the tent of meeting. And all its fat he shall take from it and burn it on the altar. Thus shall he do with the bull. As he did with the bull of the sin offering, so shall he do with this. And the priest shall make atonement for them, and they shall be forgiven. And he shall carry the bull outside the camp, and burn it up as he burned the first bull. It is the sin offering for the assembly. When a leader sins, doing unintentionally any one of the things that by the commandments of the Lord his God ought not to be done, and he realizes his guilt, or the sin which he has committed is made known to him, he shall bring as his offering a goat, a male without blemish, and shall lay his hand on the head of the goat and kill it in the place where they kill the burnt offering before the Lord. It is a sin offering. Then the priest shall take some of the blood of the sin offering with his finger and put it on the horns of the altar for burnt offering, and pour out the rest of its blood at the base of the altar of burnt offering. And all its fat he shall burn on the altar, like the fat of a sacrifice of peace offerings. So the priest shall make atonement for him for his sin, and he shall be forgiven. If any one of the common people sins unintentionally in doing any one of the things that the Lord's commandments ought not to be done, and realizes his guilt, or the sin which he has committed is made known to him, he shall bring for his offering a goat, a female, without blemish, for his sin which he has committed. And he shall lay his hand on the head of the sin offering, and kill the sin offering in the place of burnt offering. And the priest shall take some of the blood with his finger, and put it on the horns of the altar of burnt offering, and shall pour out all the rest of the blood at the base of the altar. And all its fat he shall remove, as the fat is removed from the peace offerings. And the priest shall burn it on the altar for a pleasing aroma to the Lord. And the priest shall make atonement for him, and he shall be forgiven. If he brings a lamb as an offering for a sin offering, he shall bring a female without blemish, and lay his hand on the head of the sin offering, and kill it for a sin offering in the place where they kill the burnt offering. Then the priest shall take some of the blood of the sin offering with his finger, and put it on the horns of the altar of burnt offering, and pour out all the rest of its blood at the base of the altar. And all its fat he shall remove, as the fat of the lamb is removed from the sacrifice of peace offerings. And the priest shall burn it on the altar on top of the Lord's food offerings. And the priest shall make atonement for him for the sin which he has committed, and he shall be forgiven. So the main call out that I wanted to make for Leviticus chapter 4 is going to come from verse 3. So here in verse 3, we see that the overall chapter is talking about the laws that the Israelites are to obey if they were to commit a sin. So here in verse 3, it says, if it is an anointed priest who sins, thus bringing guilt on the people, then he shall offer for the sin that he has committed a bull from the herd without blemish to the Lord for a sin offering. And I honestly just wanted to take the time to thank God for sending Jesus, for dying for our sins. Because as we can see in this text, if the priest committed a sin, that brought guilt on the entire people. And I'm so thankful with Jesus that we have a direct and personal relationship with him. And so the next person's sin or wrongdoing doesn't bring inherent sin on us. And I just wanted to take the time to just thank Jesus, because this is absolutely huge. And for chapter 4, that's the main thing that I wanted to call out. I think everything else in the chapter really speaks for itself in terms of what steps had to be taken in order to ensure that after committing a sin unintentionally, that the people were able to take those steps to put themselves back into alignment by following the commands of the Lord. So with that, I want to get into Leviticus chapter 5. If anyone sins in that he hears a public adjuration to testify, and though he is a witness, whether he has seen or come to know the matter, yet does not speak, he shall bear his iniquity. Or if anyone touches an unclean thing, whether a carcass or an unclean wild animal, or a carcass of unclean livestock, or a carcass of unclean swarming things, and it is hidden from him, and he has become unclean, and he realizes his guilt, or if he touches human uncleanness, of whatever sort of uncleanness may be with which one becomes unclean, and it is hidden from him, when he comes to know it and realizes his guilt, or if anyone utters with his lips a rash oath to do evil or to do good, any sort of rash oath that people swear, and it is hidden from him, when he comes to know it and he realizes his guilt in any of these, when he realizes his guilt in any of these and confesses the sin he has committed, he shall bring to the Lord as his compensation for the sin that he has committed a female from the flock, a lamb or a goat for a sin offering, and the priest shall make atonement for him for his sin. But if he cannot afford a lamb, then he shall bring to the Lord as his compensation for the sin that he has committed 2 turtle doves or 2 pigeons, one for a sin offering and the other for a burnt offering. He shall bring them to the priest. He shall offer first the one for the sin offering. He shall wring its head from its neck, but shall not sever it completely. And he shall sprinkle some of the blood of the sin offering on the side of the altar, while the rest of the blood shall be drained out at the base of the altar. It is a sin offering. Then he shall offer the second for a burnt offering according to the rule, and the priest shall make atonement for him for the sin that he has committed, and he shall be forgiven. But if he cannot afford 2 turtle doves or 2 pigeons, then he shall bring as his offering for the sin that he has committed 1/10 of an ephah of fine flour for a sin offering. He shall put no oil on it, and shall put no frankincense on it, for it is a sin offering. And he shall bring it to the priest, and the priest shall take a handful of it as its memorial portion, and burn this on the altar, on the Lord's food offerings. It is a sin offering. Thus the priest shall make atonement for him for the sin which he has committed in any one of these things, and he shall be forgiven. And the remainder shall be for the priest as a grain offering. Laws for guilt offerings. The Lord spoke to Moses, saying, if anyone commits a breach of faith and sins unintentionally in any of the holy things of the Lord, and he shall bring to the Lord as his compensation a ram without blemish out of the flock, valued in silver shekels, according to the shekel of the sanctuary, without a guilt offering, according to the shekel of the sanctuary, for a sin offering. He shall make restitution for what he has done amiss in the holy thing, and shall add 1/5 to it and give it to the priest. And the priest shall make atonement for him with the ram of the guilt offering, and he shall be forgiven. If anyone sins, doing any of the things that by the Lord's commandments ought not to be done, though he did not know it, then realizes his guilt, he shall bear his iniquity. He shall bring to the priest a ram without blemish out of the flock, or its equivalent, for a guilt offering, and the priest shall make atonement for him for the mistake that he made unintentionally, and he shall be forgiven. It is a guilt offering. He has indeed incurred guilt before the Lord. So my commentary for chapter 5 is going to start with verse 1, where it says, if anyone sins in that he hears a public adjuration to testify, and though he is a witness, whether he has seen or come to know the matter, yet does not speak, he shall bear his iniquity. So first, I want to break down the word adjuration. I don't want to assume that we all know what the word adjuration means. And so just from a quick search, it means it's a type of appeal, an earnest or an urgent request for someone to do something. So in this particular context, it's basically saying that if you sin because you hear someone requesting that you testify to something, and though you are a witness, whether you saw it happen directly or you've come to know some facts about the situation, but you choose not to speak up on it, you will bear your iniquity, and this is a sin. So we can essentially see that this verse is telling us that when you are in the knowledge of information that can help someone else, whether you came across that information by seeing it or coming to know the matter after the fact, if you choose to not speak on what you know, you shall bear your iniquity. And I think that that is so powerful because I personally have been in situations where I have either seen something that was wrong or have come to know something that, was wrong and still chose to not say anything. And so if you've ever done that as well, I would encourage you to really dig within yourself to find the courage and rely on the fact that you are doing the right thing by speaking up, and just have that courage to speak up when you see things that are wrong or when you're being asked to testify. That it is just important that we raise our voice and that we find our voice to make sure that we're speaking up. And the next verse I really want to call out is going to be verse 4. So this verse says, "Or if anyone utters with his lips a rash oath to do evil or to do good, any sort of rash oath that people swear, and it is hidden from him, when he comes to know it and he realizes his guilt in any of these, when he realizes his guilt in any of these and confesses the sin that he has committed, he shall bring to the Lord as his compensation for the sin he has committed a female from the flock, a lamb or a goat for a sin offering." So going back up to verse 4, it struck me as interesting that we are associating good and evil in this context, and we're putting them in the same bucket. And then I had to realize that we're putting them in the same bucket, not because it has anything to do with good or evil. It has everything to do with you're making a rash oath. So whether you are doing something rash and it's evil, or whether you're doing something rash and it's good, it's still at the end of the day a rash oath. You're making a rash decision, a rash statement, whatever it is. And as someone who has done what I felt to be, I'm talking excellent things, guys. I've done excellent things that I thought were excellent and they were good, but they were rash. And unfortunately, that's something that just through my decision making in life, I've realized that I shouldn't have made that decision because it was still a rash decision, even though it was a good decision, because it ended up causing more harm than good, not because the decision wasn't good, but because it was a rash decision. The level of thought was not put into the decision to ensure that it went through successfully, and I didn't necessarily weigh the consequences of that good decision. And so I thought that verse was very interesting to me because that's something that I've seen in my own life where I've made rash decisions. And even though I felt like they were good decisions, it still ended up coming with some undue harm because it was, bottom line, a rash decision. And so those were the main items that I wanted to call out for Leviticus chapter 5. And so with that, we can get into Leviticus chapter 6. The Lord spoke to Moses saying, "If anyone sins and commits a breach of faith against the Lord by deceiving his neighbor in a matter of deposit or security or through robbery, or if he has oppressed his neighbor or has found something lost and lied about it, swearing falsely in any of the things that people do and sin thereby, if he has sinned and has realized his guilt and will restore what he took by robbery or what he got by oppression or the deposit that was committed to him or the lost thing that he found or anything about which he has sworn falsely, he shall restore it in full and shall add a fifth to it and give it to him to whom it belongs on the day he realizes his guilt. And he shall bring to the priest as his compensation to the Lord a ram without blemish out of the flock or its equivalent for a guilt offering. And the priest shall make atonement for him before the Lord, and he shall be forgiven for any of the things that one may do and thereby become guilty. The priests and the offerings. The Lord spoke to Moses, saying, Command Aaron and his sons, saying, This is the law of the burnt offering. The burnt offering shall be on the hearth, on the altar, all night until the morning, and the fire of the altar shall be kept burning on it. And the priest shall put on his linen garment, and put his linen undergarment on his body, and he shall take up the ashes to which the fire has reduced the burnt offering on the altar, and put them beside the altar. Then he shall take off his garments and put on other garments, and carry the ashes outside the camp to a clean place. The fire on the altar shall be kept burning on it. It shall not go out. The priest shall burn wood on it every morning, and he shall arrange the burnt offering on it, and shall burn on it the fat of the peace offering. Fire shall be kept burning on the altar continually. It shall not go out. And this is the law of the grain offering. The sons of Aaron shall offer it before the Lord in front of the altar. And one shall take from it a handful of fine flour of the grain offering, and its oil, and all the frankincense that is on the grain offering, and burn this as its memorial portion on the altar, a pleasing aroma to the Lord. And the rest of it Aaron and his sons shall eat. It shall be eaten unleavened in a holy place. In the court of the tent of meeting they shall eat it. It shall not be baked with leaven. I have given it as their portion of my food offerings. It is a thing most holy, like the sin offering and the guilt offering. Every male among the children of Aaron may eat of it, as decreed throughout your generations, from the Lord's food offerings. Whatever touches them shall become holy. The Lord spoke to Moses, saying, This is the offering that Aaron and his sons shall offer to the Lord on the day when he is anointed, 1/10 of an ephah of fine flour as a regular grain offering, half of it in the morning and half of it in the evening. It shall be made with oil on a griddle. You shall bring it well mixed in baked pieces like a grain offering, and offer it for a pleasing aroma to the Lord. The priest from among Aaron's sons, who is anointed to succeed him, shall offer it to the Lord as decreed forever. The whole of it shall be burnt. Every grain offering of a priest shall be wholly burned. It shall not be eaten. The Lord spoke to Moses, saying, Speak to Aaron and his sons, saying, This is the law of the sin offering. In the place where the burnt offering is killed, shall the sin offering be killed before the Lord. It is most holy. The priest who offers it for sin shall eat it. In a holy place it shall be eaten. In the court of the tent of meeting, whatever touches its flesh shall be holy. And when any of its blood is splashed on a garment, you shall wash that on which it was splashed in a holy place. And the earthenware vessel in which it is boiled shall be broken. But if it is boiled in a bronze vessel, that shall be scoured and rinsed in water. Every male among the priests may eat of it. It is most holy. But no sin offering shall be eaten from which any blood is brought into the tent of meeting to make atonement in the holy place. It shall be burned up with fire. So the main commentary I wanted to make for chapter 6 really revolves around the priests. It probably was naive of me, but back in Exodus chapter 39, I was so just fascinated by the garments that the priests were privileged to be able to wear, with all the stones and the breast pieces and the golds and the diamond. It was just an eloquent sounding garment. But as you continue to read, I can at least say for me that I think I fell into the trap that most humans fall into, where you look at the aesthetic of something and you fall for it versus the responsibility. As we can see just from these last couple of chapters that we've read for Leviticus, being a priest is no joke. It is a lot of responsibility because you are essentially the person that is in between God and the people. And so I just wanted to call that out, not so much because you might have looked at the priest and thought the same thing I thought, but just more as something in general that I got from this particular chapter is that we should focus as a people more on the responsibility of what we want versus the aesthetic of what we want. So to give a few examples, if you want a luxury car, you want an Audi or a Porsche or a Tesla or whatever you want, right? Let's think about the aesthetic. Of course, in today's day and age, the aesthetic of that is super pleasing. But when we think about the responsibility of that, what does the maintenance actually look like? What is the average lifespan of these luxury cars? What is actually going to be a great investment for my money? And so that's really what I'm getting at here, is to not just look at the aesthetic of something and say, oh, I want it, but really to focus on the responsibility of it and allow that responsibility to be the main driver. Thank you so much for listening to today's episode. I hope you found some value in this content. If you did, please leave me a rating or a review wherever you are listening. This would mean the absolute world to me. I'd love for you to visit the website at www.thedailybiblereader.com. I'd also love to hear from you on social media. I can be reached at Twitter, Instagram, or TikTok at the Bible Reader, the number 3. Hope you stay tuned for the next episode.